Hi, boys and girls, and welcome back. So I am back with another few chapters of Tale of Despereaux, but I wanted to show you my progress with my shoebox diorama. So remember, I didn't use a shoebox. I used a regular box because I wanted to make mine a little bit bigger. And you can see I made some bookshelves in there. I just glued a piece of paper down. And then over here, I'm working on this stained glass window from, remember when Despereaux feels the light on his eyes when he's in the library. And so that's what I wanted to include there. I think I'm going to go get a little tea light from the dollar store that's battery operated so that it kind of glows from inside. And I'm thinking about doing 2 stories here and making this part from here down the dungeon with the rats. So I just wanted to show you my progress. And I made, remember the big book that had Once Upon a Time, and it was about the knight and the princess. So I think that book is going to be there. But I made a Despereaux, and the scale is all wrong. So I'm still working on this. He's way too big. The scale is just wrong. So anyway, I'm going to work on Despereaux and let you know how I'm progressing. And I'm wondering how you are doing with your shoebox dioramas. And remember, it's not something that you have to finish. It could take you a few days. It could even take you a few weeks. And it's something you can earn a badge for. And I'm very excited on our fireside chat this week. I'm going to tell you about some other badges that we're going to do. And this is pretty cool. I don't know if you guys have been hearing around the school, but at the end of Camp Reads a Lot, 2 really lucky kids who have participated are going to win a bicycle. And so we have 2 bikes for Camp Reads a Lot. We have 2 more bikes for Camp Read Some More after spring break. And we are going to have some really fun awards at the end of each camp. And one of the ways that you can get an award is going to be for things like really great projects. So every person that earns a badge will earn a badge. And then of those people, we'll have a group of teachers choose the very best project they think in each category for badges. And we'll have a very special Newberryan Award for those people. So just wanted to let you know what's coming up. And I'm excited you're back. So a few more chapters of Tale of Despereaux. So we were on chapter 11. When Despereaux came to, he heard the drum. His father was beating a rhythm that had much more boom and much less tat. Together, Lester and the drum produced an ominous sound that went something like this. Boom, 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 tat. Boom, 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 tat. Make your way for the thread, cried a mouse, who was pushing a wooden spool of thread through the crowd. Make way for the thread. Boom, 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 tat, went the drum. To the dungeon, shouted the mice. Despereaux lay on his back, blinking his eyes. How he wondered, how had things gone so terribly wrong? Wasn't it a good thing to love? In the book, love was a very good thing. Because the knight loved the fair maiden, he was able to rescue her. They lived happily ever after. It said so. In the book, they were the last words on the page, happily ever after. Despereaux was certain that he had read exactly those words time and time again. Lying on the floor with the drum beating and the mice shouting and the threadmaster calling out, make way, Despereaux had a sudden chilling thought. Had some other mouse eaten the words that spoke the truth? Did the knight and the fair maiden really not live happily ever after? Reader, do you believe that there is such a thing as happily ever after? Or, like Despereaux, have you too begun to question the possibility of happy endings? Happily ever after, whispered Despereaux. Happily ever after, he said again, as the spool of thread came to a stop beside him. The thread, the thread, the thread, murmured the mice. I'm sorry, said the mouse behind the spool, but I have to ask you to stand up. I have to do my job. Despereaux got slowly to his feet. On your hind legs, please, said the threadmaster. It's the rules. Despereaux stood on his hind legs. Thank you, said the mouse. I appreciate it. While Despereaux watched, this is emotional. My gosh, this is really, can you imagine how scared Despereaux must be? His family has turned against him and he's headed for the dungeon and I can't even imagine how he must be feeling. Oh, I'm just going to let my heart sit on that for a minute. While Despereaux watched, the threadmaster unwound a length of red thread from the spool and tied a loop. Just enough for the neck, just enough for the neck, muttered the mouse. No more, no less. That's what the threadmaster taught me. Every thread for the neck. He looked up at Despereaux and then back down again at the loop of thread. And you, my friend, have a small neck. The threadmaster raised his arms and put them around Despereaux's neck. He leaned in close, and Despereaux smelled celery. He could feel the threadmaster's breath in his ear as he worked at tightening the thread. Is she beautiful? The threadmaster whispered. What? Said Despereaux. Shh. Is the princess beautiful? The Princess P? Yes, she is lovely beyond all imagining, said Despereaux. Oh my goodness, I have to show you. So there's an illustration here. It says, just enough for the neck, muttered the mouse. No more, no less. I don't know if you can see this scene, but I'm going to leave it here. You can see this is a pretty desperate situation for Despereaux. She is lovely beyond all imagining, said Despereaux. Just right, the threadmaster said. He drew back, he nodded his head. A lovely princess, just so, like a fairy tale, and you love her, as a knight loves a maiden. You love her with a courtly love, a love that is based on bravery and courtesy and honor and devotion. Just so. How do you know that? Despereaux said. How do you know about fairy tales? Shh. The mouse leaned in close, and Despereaux smelled celery again, green and alive. Be brave, friend, whispered the threadmaster. Be brave, for the princess. And then he stepped back and turned and shouted, Fellow mice, the thread has been tied. The thread has been knotted. A roar of approval went up from the crowd. Despereaux squared his shoulders. He made a decision. He would do as the threadmaster had suggested. He would be brave for the princess. Even if, reader, could it be true? There was no such thing as happily ever after. Chapter 12. Adieu. The sound of the drum changed again. The final tat disappeared, and it became nothing but boom, 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 boom. Lester used his only tail, Lester used only his tail, bringing it down with great force and seriousness upon the drum. The threadmaster retreated. Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my eyes tonight. I need my glasses. I should go get them. The threadmaster retreated. The room full of mice fell silent, expectant, waiting. And as Despereaux stood before them with the red thread around his neck and the 14 members of the mouse council perched on the bricks above him, 2 burly mice came forward. Black pieces of cloth covered their heads. There were slits for their eyes. We, said the bigger of the 2 mice, will escort you to the dungeon. Despereaux, Antoinette called out. Ah, my Despereaux. Despereaux looked out into the crowd of mice and saw his mother. She was easy to spot. In honor of her youngest mouse being sent to the dungeon, she had put on a tremendous amount of makeup. Each of the hooded mice put a paw on Despereaux's shoulder. It's time, said the one on the left, the first hood. Antoinette pushed her way through the crowd. He is my son, she said. I want to have a last word with my son. Despereaux looked at his mother. He concentrated on standing before her without trembling. He concentrated on not being a disappointment. Please, said Antoinette, what will happen to him? What will happen to my baby? Ma'am, said the first hood. His voice was deep and slow. You don't want to know. I want to know. I want to know. He's my child, the child of my heart, the last of my mice babies. The hooded mice said nothing. Tell me, said Antoinette. The rats, said the first. The rats, said the second. Yes, yes, we, the rats, what of them? The rats will eat him, said the second hood. Ah, said Antoinette, mon Dieu. At the thought of being eaten by rats, Despereaux forgot about being brave. He forgot about not being a disappointment. He felt himself heading into another faint, but his mother, who had an excellent sense of dramatic timing, beat him to it. She executed a beautiful, flawless swoon, landing right at Despereaux's feet. Now you've done it, said the first hood. It doesn't matter, said the second. Step over her. We have a job to do. Nobody's mother is going to stop us. To the dungeon, repeated the first hood. But his voice, so deep and certain a moment ago, now shook a tiny bit. He put a paw on Despereaux and tugged him forward, and the two hoods and Despereaux stepped over to Antoinette. The crowd parted. The mice began again to chant, to the dungeon, to the dungeon, to the dungeon. The drumbeat continued. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. And Despereaux was led away. At the last moment, Antoinette came out of her faint and shouted one word to her child. That word, reader, was adieu. Do you know the definition of adieu? Don't bother with your dictionary, I will tell you. Adieu is the French word for farewell. Farewell is not the word that you would like to hear from your mother as you are being led to the dungeon by two oversized mice in black hoods. Words that you would like to hear are take me instead. I will go to the dungeon in my son's place. There is a great deal of comfort in those words. But reader, there is no comfort in the word farewell. Even if you say it in French, farewell is a word that, in any language, is full of sorrow. It is a word that promises absolutely nothing. Chapter 13. Perfidy unlimited. Did you guys look up the definition of perfidy? I have just a few kids that did who got very special prizes. So if you look up the definition of perfidy and you put it on a little note with your name and your teacher's name, then you will get a very special prize. Perfidy. 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 Together, the three mice traveled down, down, down. The thread around Despereaux's neck was tight. He felt as if it was choking him. He tugged at it with one paw. Don't touch the thread, barked the second hood. Yeah, echoed the first hood. Don't touch the thread. They moved quickly, and whenever Despereaux slowed, one of the two hoods poked him in the shoulder and told him to keep moving. They went through holes in the wall and down the golden stairs. They went past rooms with doors that were closed and doors that were flung wide. The three mice traveled across marble floors under heavy velvet drapes and moved through warm patches of sunlight and dark pools of shade. This, thought Despereaux, was the world that he was leaving behind, the world that he knew and loved. Sorry, my dog is chewing on his toys right next to me. Okay, sorry, I lost my place. This, thought Despereaux, was the world he was leaving behind, the world he knew and loved, and somewhere in it, the Princess P was laughing and smiling and clapping her hands to music, unaware of Despereaux's fate. That he would not be able to let the princess know what had become of him seemed suddenly unbearable to the mouse. Would it be possible for me to have a last word with the princess? Despereaux asked. A word? Said the second hood. You want a word with a human? I want to tell her what has happened to me. Geez, said the first hood. He stopped and stamped a paw on the floor in frustration. Cripes, you can't learn, can you? The voice was terribly familiar to Despereaux. Furlough, he said. What? Said the first hood irritably. Despereaux shuddered. His own brother was delivering him to the dungeon. His heart stopped beating and shrunk to a small, cold, disbelieving pebble. But then, just as quickly as it leapt alive again, beating with hope. Furlough, Despereaux said, and he took one of his brother's paws in his own. Please let me go. Please, I'm your brother. Furlough rolled his eyes. He took his paw out of Despereaux's. No, he said, no way. Please, said Despereaux. No, said Furlough. Rules are rules. Reader, do you recall the word perfidy? As your story progresses, perfidy becomes an even more appropriate word, doesn't it? Perfidy was certainly the word that was in Despereaux's mind as the mice finally approached the narrow, steep stairs that led to the black hole of the dungeon. They stood, the three mice, two with hoods, one without, and contemplated the abyss before them. And then Furlough stood up on his hind legs, placed his right paw over his heart. For the good of Castle Mice, he announced to the darkness, we deliver this day to the dungeon a mouse in need of punishment. He is, according to the laws as we have established, wearing the red thread of death. The red thread of death? Repeated Despereaux in a small voice. Wearing the red thread of death was a terrible phrase, but the mouse didn't have long to consider its implications because he was suddenly pushed from behind by the hooded mice. The push was a strong one, and it sent Despereaux flying down the stairs into the dungeon. As he tumbled whisker over tail through darkness, there were only two words in his mind. One was perfidy, and the other word that he clung to was P. Perfidy, P, perfidy, P. These were the words that pinwheeled through Despereaux's mind as his body descended into the darkness. And you can see here, this is just before they pushed him into the dungeon. Oh my. What a very, very sad part of the story that we're in. I'm thinking a lot about Despereaux, and I'm thinking about whether we should write him some letters and give him some words of encouragement and maybe some, just let's write Despereaux some letters. I think it's the best thing for us to do. And, when you're feeling down and you get a letter, it feels so great. I think we should write letters to Despereaux. So if you write me letters to Despereaux, I will make sure that they get to him. And you can drop them in my the green box for camp. So anyway, Miss Castillo's looking very tired tonight. Anyway, I am so happy that you are making this journey with us. I will tell you that one of the badges that you can earn is an author study, and it is if you read 3 books by the same author. And my thought is, I love this author. She's just one of my very favorites. And there are a few other books that she's written that I'm thinking I might let you guys vote on for Camp Read Some More after spring break. So I'll get those books out and share them with you at a fireside chat, and maybe we can have take a vote at school, and you guys can pick the next read aloud that we do. So anyway, I also too, I really encourage you to go look at the other parts of this website. If you click on any one of the signs, it'll take you to really fun places. We have an outdoor library that has some really fun read-alouds in it and information and just so many fun things for you to explore. So anyway, have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.